Canadian citizen and you're considering your options to move to the United States, then there are typically two avenues for you, either through employment sponsorship or family sponsorship. And at Richards and Jurusik, we've been handling U.S. immigration for Canadians for decades now. This is what we do. We have helped thousands of Canadian citizens transition from living in Canada to the United States legally, either through sponsorship from a U.S. citizen family member or through sponsorship through an employer. Those are the two primary means to come to the United States. Canadians have many temporary options to come here. They can come as You can come as a visa exempt Canadian just by traveling on your passport as a visitor, but that duration is limited, typically to 6 months per year to come to the United States. Then there are other options to come to the United States on a temporary basis, such as a TN visa or TN status for Canadians, because Canadians are visa exempt. They don't require a visa. With the proper paperwork and an offer letter from a U.S. employer, qualified Canadians can present themselves through pre-flight inspection or at a U.S. port of entry to obtain status to work in the United States in qualifying professions such as accountants, engineers, computer systems analysts, and other professions that are listed among the occupations for TN status in the United States. Canadians are also qualified to be able to obtain H-1B status for other professions in the United States. Another popular option is what is called the L-1 visa. And this is for multinational companies that have offices in the United States and Canada as well, for them to transfer qualified employees to the United States. And if you are a Canadian company doing business in Canada and want to open up a new operation in the United States, the L-1 visa is often a mechanism to do that, to allow you to open up a U.S. operation in conjunction with your operation in Canada, and then transfer yourself and qualifying employees to the United States to work. There are also other options, such as the E-1 visa, that is dedicated to Canadians that are conducting substantial trade with the United States. And this could be goods or services with the United States. As long as your international trade with the United States is more than 50%, you could qualify for a temporary work visa under the E-1 treaty trader visa. And one of the other popular options for Canadians is an E-2 visa. The E-2 visa is for those who commit a substantial financial investment in the United States to start a business or to purchase a business, and also to create jobs for U.S. workers along with that business in the United States. And we also see many Canadians come to the United States on a temporary basis as students, and they come and they get your education here. So the question often arises, well, I've had this temporary status or temporary ability to be in the United States. Now, what do I need to do in order to transition over to permanent residence? How do I permanently reside in the United States? I no longer just want to be temporary in the US, but I want to make my stay permanent. And that is typically through two mechanisms. One is you have an immediate relative who is a US citizen who then sponsors you to be able to move to the United States permanently through U.S. permanent resident status, which is also referred to as a green card in the United States. And it has to be an immediate relative to sponsor you. And only certain individuals are classified as immediate relatives for U.S. immigration. That would be a spouse, an adult child, a parent, or qualifying brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens as well, would be able to be sponsored to come to the United States on a permanent basis, obtain U.S. permanent residency, and live in the United States. The other method to obtain permanent residency status in the United States would be through employer sponsorship. So if you are working in the United States on a temporary basis and your employer wishes to employ you on a permanent basis in the US, there are mechanisms through which your employer, whether you're on an H-1B, a TN, an L, are able to then move forward with permanent sponsorship to transition you from a temporary worker over to a U.S. permanent resident or a green card holder. Those are the most common methods to obtain U.S. permanent residence, either through that employment sponsorship from an immediate relative or through an employer once you develop that relationship with an employer on a temporary work visa and having them sponsor you. There's also another option that is available to Canadians as well through what is called the diversity lottery system. And through that lottery system, the US gives out a certain number of green cards per year to individuals through that lottery. One of the main advantages of being a Canadian too is if you do eventually obtain permanent residence in the United States and then become a US citizen through your permanent resident status, you are able to become a dual citizen. That means you are able to have both your Canadian passport and your US passport. You don't have to give up your Canadian passport by becoming a US citizen. So if you're a Canadian, you're looking for options to either live or work in the US on a temporary or permanent basis, we can help. This is what we do. We help Canadians live, work, and do business in the United States all the time, and we've done so for decades. Reach out to us if you have any other questions as a Canadian and your options to come and live and work in the United States.